This is such a big week. So, welcome to Module 7, our Making Peace with Food module. There are two videos in this, and ooh, baby, we are really putting together a lot of what we've been through so far. Okay, we're going to put it together in a really powerful exercise that I am so excited to share with you guys. Before we get into the exercise, we're going to go over just why, and this is, we've talked about why it's harmful to have off-limits foods, to have rules and good and bads, right? But we're going to kind of add to our knowledge base on why it's harmful to have off-limits foods. Of course, if you have allergies, duh, it's a different thing. But we're just saying like allergies aside, why it's important to not have off-limits food, right? And so we're going to go a little deeper and talk about the dietary restraint theory. So the dietary restraint theory shows us that these 5 big things happen whenever we make food off limits. So whenever we say, oh, this food is bad, I'm not allowed to have it, right? Or I shouldn't have it. So the first thing is the what the hell effect. It's you probably already know what I'm talking about, just based off of that name. It's when we have like a piece of chocolate or like some chips, and we're like, well, what the hell? I just ruined my whole day of quote healthy eating, so I might just like binge and go crazy the rest of the day. Anybody else? Or maybe it's that one piece of chocolate, like, what the hell? I already broke my diet, so now I'm just going to go crazy for the next few weeks or months or whatever. I've been there. I've done that for sure. The next one goes along with it. It's all about perception. And these studies show us that, dieters are likely to eat past the point of fullness, even when they just think or perceive that they broke one of their rules. And it's all just about perception, you guys. So they think they broke a rule, and thus they're like, oh, I ruined it all because I broke this rule. And then they go and they eat past the point of fullness and binge and all of that stuff, right? And this can be really tricky, especially in this day and age. Diets are so tricky, and even like healthy, like quote healthy foods, like legumes are in Whole30 and whole wheat bread. You're not allowed to have on Whole30, and so like you could legit have like these like whole wheat bread and be like, what the hell? I broke it. It's like it's craziness. It's madness, right? It's madness. But also, it's a good time to insert here that any food, any snack, any meal, even a whole day, even a whole week of eating is never gonna like all of a sudden make us healthy or unhealthy. So our perception is just so skewed. We think that like eating this one thing, this one meal, this one snack, this one day, is all of a sudden just eliminates whatever else. It's just, our perception is so skewed. Number 3 is the anticipation of food restriction. This is when we say, oh, the diet starts tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to be good. And so then we spend the whole day just going crazy, right? Just eating all the foods we think that we're never going to eat ever again. And then we end up having like a million last suppers because we start and end diets over and over and over again. Am I right? Number 4 is the irony of thought suppression. Okay, so it's that whole saying, like, don't think about the white elephant. Now all you can do is think about a white elephant. Don't think about bread. Now all you can do is think about bread. It's just psychology 101. When you say don't think about this, all you can do is think about it. Not to mention that psychology is happening right in our minds, but then also physiologically our body is, remember, cranking up appetite. And so we are physically like having more appetite and hungrier, and then mentally we're like bread, right? So that totally makes us go crazy. The last one is this forbidden fruit phenomenon. This shows that there's a heightened allure of forbidden foods for dieters that's not present in a non-dieter. So for someone who has never had forbidden foods, they'll just see donuts and be like, oh, okay, like, do I want one? Yes or no? It's no big deal. That end of story. Go on with their day. A dieter would be like, oh my gosh, there's a donut. I shouldn't have it. I want it. Don't have it. And then they'd probably end up binging the donuts. I used to like want like an entire box of donuts if I saw them. And now I realize I don't always love donuts. Like I can easily pass it up just because like I don't really love sweets that much. I like salty foods way more than I like sweets. And so there's this crazy allure that happens when we just simply have foods that's off limits. That makes it really hard to feel empowered by food. So we can see how, oh my gosh, like so much is happening psychologically when we declare foods off limits that just makes it really hard to have a normal, easy, wonderful relationship with food. And so again, we've been working on full permission the past 6 videos essentially, right? And this is again just more reason why it's so important that we see food as neutral. It's so that we can really make peace with food. Make peace with food, accept that all foods are fair game, all foods fit. Because when we're in that space, then we're empowered to make choices of what foods feel good in our bodies. And oftentimes people ask like, well, what if I keep eating a food that actually doesn't feel good to me? It's probably because you don't have full permission. So for instance, corn does not feel good in my body. I get a violent stomach ache. Like I will cry. It's awful. It's awful. And it's just corn. It's not like cornmeal or it sounds worse than it is. It's just like corn on the cob or like tortilla chips or like, yeah, that's it. And so for me, my mindset is, I'm allowed to have that. But I don't choose it because I don't want to feel physically ill. I legit have not had corn or tortilla chip like that. I have these other tortilla chips that are corn-free. Yay! In like 8 or 9 years because it is so painful. I just don't choose that. It's the same thing with someone maybe who's lactose intolerant or who has celiac disease. Like, are they allowed to have gluten or dairy? Sure, but do they choose that based on how it's going to make their bodies feel? Especially with celiac, it's like, it's going to really hurt them, actually, because they have that autoimmune disorder, right? And so that's the mindset here. We're allowed to have anything. What do we choose? What's going to feel good in our bodies? When it comes down to it, I think, by now you probably have already experienced this. Like, it doesn't feel good if you just eat pizza all the time. Like, that's not going to feel good. It's also not going to feel good if we're only eating salads. We need a variety of foods to feel good, period. And that's just very intuitive. So that's why it's so important that we see foods as a neutral. We make peace with foods so that we're able to have this super easy relationship with food, an empowered relationship with food. And there's a science behind making peace with food. It's a science of habituation. So people who don't have off limits foods, who haven't dieted, have already gone through this whole process because all food has been available. They've eaten it all, and so all food is just normal to them. So they've already done that. But those of us who have dieted, it's not the case. And so there's a lot of foods that we just haven't really had much of. And so of course they're so special and like, I want to eat them all. But once we just have regular access to these foods and eat them regularly, it's just no big deal anymore. We can eat pizza and just enjoy it and easily stop when we're full. I used to eat like entire pizzas because I couldn't stop myself. Now my husband and I split like the same pizza that we love. All pepperoni, half hot peppers, half mushrooms. I hate mushrooms. I love hot peppers. Like every Friday night. And I easily stop when I'm full and I have leftovers that I often, will eat later that night or the next day. It's great. But that was not the experience for me years ago. Like I want more and more and more and more. I couldn't stop myself from eating all the pizza. And so making peace with food helps us to really make peace and have this wonderful, empowering relationship with food. Okay, so before we dive in, we're going to do a little readiness survey. There's 10 questions that are going to just kind of help you see, like, are you ready for this exercise? You likely are ready for it. It's why I save it for module 7. Okay, and just because you may be the answer no to a couple doesn't mean that you're not ready. You're the expert on you. I want you to gauge where you feel like you're at, and are you ready for this exercise? There's no right or wrong here. What do you feel like you need? This questionnaire offers us also, guys, a really neat way to check in. We're over halfway into this journey. Let's see where you're at so that we can actually see, okay, you know what? I still need to work on this area. Great. Again, it's not like, oh God, I suck. It's like, okay, cool. Let's just look at maybe what other areas you want to focus in on more the rest of your time in this program. So it's only helpful. So no stress here. So go ahead and take out a pen, your journal, and let's go ahead and answer these questions. Number 1 is, are you able to eat without feeling guilty? Yes or no? And it doesn't have to be like, oh, well, all the time or never, right? It's probably like, okay, most of the time, then yes, you do. Maybe sometimes you feel guilty. Okay, note that down. Sometimes I do. And it's with these foods. Okay, then just work on that, right? Go back to those practices that we mentioned in prior videos. Number 2, I am able to identify key vulnerability points, like being too hungry, too stressed out, too tired, and so forth. Yes or no? 3, I am able to clearly identify my biological cues of hunger, ranging from ravenously hungry to gentle hunger. Yes or no? Feel free to pause this whenever you need more time. Number 4, I can clearly identify my biological cues of hunger and fullness. This is fullness rather, ranging from gentle fullness to painfully stuffed. Yes or no? Number 5, I can distinguish between the uncontrollable, or the uncomfortable rather, sensation of guilt versus the uncomfortable sensation of feeling physically too full. That's an interesting one. Number 6, I am able to cope with my feelings without only turning to food, meaning you have a variety of ways to cope with your feelings. Food's allowed to be one of them. Number 7, I can distinguish between being meal hungry and snack hungry. Yes or no? Number 8, I am able to experience pleasurable satisfaction from eating a meal. Yes or no? Number 9, I am able to tolerate the uncomfortable feeling of being too full without compensating by skipping a meal or exercise penance. Yes or no? Number 10, and this last one refers to this specific exercise that we'll do. Do you have an environment where you're able to eat in an unrushed fashion and without any distraction? Yes or no? Okay, so just pause here and look back and acknowledge what came up for you in those 10 questions. Maybe you see areas where you're like, okay, cool, like I can still work on feeling less guilty around food. Okay, I can still work on, on this more. Awesome. Make that note so that you can be like, okay, you know what? This week I want to make sure I really refocus. Maybe you can even go back and watch that video again. Great. Like that's only helpful. Or maybe you're like, damn, I answered yes to like a lot of these. Awesome. Seriously, amazing. Compare this to that assessment from week 2, and you're gonna be like, holy crap, it's pretty awesome. So whatever came up for you, I want you to acknowledge it, celebrate it, share with us in the Facebook group. In the next video, if you feel ready, we will do the making peace with food exercise.